Back in the garage today, back in the garage today. What's going on, guys? Back in the garage today, getting ready to replace the wheel bearings on my 2016 KTM 1290 Super Adventure. Gonna be the exact same process for any of the rest of the KTM Adventure lineup. Just double check your part numbers versus the ones I put on the screen. Be sure to check your specific year, make, and model so you get the right parts that you need. But all the parts I use will be linked down in the description below, and I'll also place them up on the screen during the video. In case you're wondering why I'm replacing the wheel bearings, actually the front and rears are fine, but the bike does have well over 50,000 miles on it, and the Sprocket carrier bearing is starting to show, bearings are starting to show signs of wear. I just personally prefer to replace them all at once. So one other thing to be aware of, and I'll show this early on in the video, you are going to need some specialty tools. They're not cheap, but they're not very expensive depending on the brand you go with and where you get them from. And if you're going to maintain your own bike, definitely a worthwhile investment. So let's hop into it. I may change clothes during this because I got sent the wrong rear wheel bearings. They'll actually be here tomorrow. So I'm going to take care of the front wheel bearings and the sprocket bearings tonight, and this will all be part of the same video. So let's go. So we are actually going to start with the sprocket carrier bearings. Obviously, you need to know how to take the wheels off your bike. If you don't, I'm going to link that video up in the corner. That'll show you how to take them off and how to put them back on. The first specialty tool we're going to need is a bearing puller. Now, this one's a Pittsburgh one. I picked this up from Harbor Freight. I believe it's under $100. You've got a bunch of different size bearing pullers in there. You also have your slide hammer. So what you're going to have to do is figure out which size puller you're going to need to use on this to get started. The other specialty tool you're going to need, though not for this beginning process, is a bearing race and seal driver set. Again, this is one I picked up from Harbor Freight, relatively inexpensive. It's got a bunch of different sizes we can use. You're going to need a hammer, not that that's a specialty tool, and it's got the handle here to drive. So we'll get to how to use these things here in just a moment, but I just want you to be aware. Some other things you'll need: some snap ring pliers, hammer, a couple other little odds and ends, but we'll get to that. All right, so figuring out which size bearing puller we need to use. It's going to be hard to show on camera. There's a little ridge between these two spacers, and we're just going to have to get this in there. And then we're going to tighten this down using our wrenches here. Get our slide hammer spun down on. Let's see if we can pop it up out of there. There we go. Got the first one out. These shouldn't be too difficult to get out. The bearings may be another story. Make sure you remember which side this one goes on. That obviously goes on the inside. Now we're just going to flip it over, and we're going to do the same thing to the spacer on the outside of the sprocket. And we've got this spacer out. Alright, so one thing that's a little bit different about this, even though I said we'd be pulling from the inside out, on the sprocket carrier you're actually not. You're going to pull them both out this way. So you can only pull one out at a time. We need a little bit bigger puller in this case. So once again, there's a little bit of separation in between the two bearings. So we want to get our puller in there, make sure it's in the right place. Tighten it down a little bit. Alright, so change of plans. Since this thing does not want to come out, we're going to set it here. We're just going to drive it out using our race and seal driver. Just get the right size one there. You're starting to move. There. Damn things are finally out. Okay, so with your bearings out, make sure your inner hub's cleaned up, and then we're going to get the new bearings, and we're going to set them on here, and then we're going to take our driver on the first one and drive it all the way in. Now, one thing I'm going to do, or that I've done earlier, and this is what I recommend, throw your bearings in the freezer beforehand. That'll help them shrink up a little bit. We've got this metal heated up so it's expanded, so they should drive in a little bit easier. So I'm going to go grab the first one out of the freezer, and we're going to drive it in. And obviously we need to start with the sprocket where the outside of the hub pointing up like this. All right, so get it good and lined up. And then we're just going to start here with some small taps to get it started. All right, first one's all the way in. All right, so we got our second bearing. We want to drive it in until it's flush with the outer part, or the ridge of the carrier. Looks good. Now, these pieces we took out earlier, they are filthy. So there's actually 3 pieces here. We are going to get these all cleaned up, and then we're going to get them put back on. So I'm going to do that off camera with some brake cleaner and some towels. All right, so with those parts cleaned up, I should note I did order a new Nilos ring. It's optional. Here's what the old one looked like. We are reusing these other spacers, so they're all cleaned up. I'm going to flip this over. This smaller one goes in the back here. If you can't press it in, we're probably going to have to use the driver. Just be careful with it. That popped right into place. Make sure you've got your ring in the right orientation. Make sure that's good and cleaned up. Line this up. You heard it bottom out, and we've got the carrier bearings done. Got brand new bearings in there. Now we're going to move on to the front wheel. So on the front wheel, we've got this spacer in here opposite side. I don't think, no, we're good on the side where the ABS is. So pull that spacer out. We're going to reuse it. Next thing, you can use a pick. You might be able to use a screwdriver, or you can use a seal puller. You do need to pull the seals out on both sides. I'm going to be replacing these. Recommend, especially since I just tore through that one. Got the seal out. There's all kinds of dirt and crud in there. We'll fool with that later. Flip your wheel over. Get the seal out on this side as well. All right, now we can get access to the bearings. Okay, so with the seals removed and the ABS side of the rotor up, it's going to be hard to see in here, but we do have a snap ring we need to remove. So we're going to get this out of here. There it goes. Make sure you hold on to the snap ring because you're going to have to reuse it. Next thing we're going to do now is we're going to pull, the bearings on the front and rear wheels. Unlike the sprocket carrier we were able to drive through, we're going to have to pull these from inside out. So find the right size bearing puller. There is a tube, metal tube in between the two bearings in the wheel there. So you don't want to catch it. You want to catch the little lip on the bearing itself. So let me get this into place, and then we'll get our pull hammer back on here and our slide hammer back on here and start to try to hammer this thing out. May not have looked like it, but I got that one side to move some. So I've got some spacing, so I'm going to use a punch. Just kind of work my way around. Just got to make sure you're not hitting that tube in there. Boy, did that one suck. Got it out of there, tore it up a little bit, but we're not reusing it. Make sure get that seal out of here. Alright, so this actually looks pretty good. I'm going to clean it up just a little bit, and then we're going to put a thin layer of grease on the inside. We're going to clean up the inside of our hubs where the bearings go, and then we're going to grab our ice cold bearings from the freezer and get the new ones pressed in. Okay, so with our ice cold bearing and the ABS ring down, we're going to take our new bearing, get it kind of as flush and level as possible. Take our driver, you hear it seat, give it one more good tap. That's it. Now we'll flip it over, ABS ring up. This is our tube. It's got some fresh grease on the inside of it. We're going to drop it down, and we're going to grab our next bearing. Do the same thing. Flush and level. Take our driver. Alright, we're good. Next we're going to grab our snap ring, make sure it's cleaned up, grab our snap ring pliers. Usually good to have a screwdriver close by too, just to help you kind of get this thing down into place. Did it by finger, heard it click in. Now we want to replace our seals on each side, so I'm going to grab a little bit of grease. There is an inside part of the seal and an outside part. The inside part's got a little cavity in there. We're going to put a little bit of grease on here and then pop them into place. Don't use too much grease. While grease helps them go in, and also helps them seal. It can also attract dirt, so you want to kind of keep it to a minimum. Should be able to just pop these in with your fingers. So it's in there. I just like to wipe the excess grease off. Flip this over. If it doesn't want to go in right, we can use our seal driver to help a little bit. There we go. Alright, we got the front wheel done, and then tomorrow morning when the parts come in, I will throw my bearings in the freezer and we'll come out and take care of the rear wheel. Alright, so our rear wheel bearings came in place. We're going to keep the this side up, and we're going to remove that seal. That was easy enough. And then same thing as before, on this side we do have a snap ring. We're going to have to get it out of place. There we go, got it out of place. And then what we're going to have to do is, like what we started to do on the front wheel, same sort of deal. We have a tube down inside of there. We need to figure out, this one's going to be a little bit smaller, so we're going to have to grab a different size bearing puller and get it hooked underneath there. Get our slide hammer on. We may have to throw some heat on it. If you guys are unsure of what I was using yesterday, just some MAP gas. You can pick that up at Lowe's. Amazing what a little bit of heat will do. Should be able to reach down in here and pull this metal tube out. Again, we'll get this cleaned up and get a thin coat of grease on the inside of it. In the meantime, we're going to flip this wheel over and start working on the bearing on the other side. We don't have to worry about the tube anymore, so we can expand this out. Go ahead and tighten it down a little bit. Go. Get our slide hammer put on. And then just to make life a little bit easier, throw a little bit of heat on it. Easy enough. All right, now we're gonna get our hubs cleaned up, and then we're gonna get our metal tube that goes in between there cleaned up, get a thin coat of grease in there, and then go grab our ice cold bearings from the freezer. All right, so with the brake disc side down, there is a plastic washer that goes in here. All you got to do is just clean it up, set it down into place. We've got our ice cold bearing. We're going to try to get as flush as possible. And then we're going to grab our driver and drive it down into place. You'll kind of hear it bottom out just like you did there. Now we'll flip her over. We've got our metal tube all cleaned up with a thin coat of grease on it. We're going to kind of center it down in the hub as best we can, and then we're going to go grab our other ice cold, make sure that's cleaned up. We grab our other ice cold bearing out of the freezer and drive her down in there. Alright, same thing as before, get it lined up as best you can. We grab our driver and our hammer. Heard it seat. And the last thing we have to do is grab, well, not last thing, we got one more thing we need to do. We need to grab our snap ring, get it back down into place. That did not click all the way in. We should be able to make it okay. Grab a screwdriver. I have to use a screwdriver and snap ring pliers. There we go. That's snapped into place. The last thing we need to do is grab our new seal, put a thin coat of grease on it, get that into place, and then we're done. All right, we've got our seal. We're going to grab just a thin coat of grease. It'll help it seal, and then also just help it slide into place a little bit easier. Get that. Should just be able to press it in. That's it. They're ready to go back on the bike. All right, guys, so that's it. That's how you install new front and rear wheel bearings, as well as the Sprocket carrier bearings, seals, all those sorts of things in one of these KTM adventure bikes. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, make sure to double check your part numbers. I can guarantee the part numbers I put up will fit a 2015 to 17 KTM 1290 Super Adventure. Even if your part numbers are different, the process is going to be the same. So just be prepared to be patient or use a lot of swear words. They don't always want to come out easily. And it's always good to have a torch nearby because heat definitely helps. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider that subscribe button, because if you like motorcycles, well, this is the place to be. If you have any questions about anything, I'll link all the parts down below, as well as some of the specialty tools. But if there's something I missed, let me know down in the comments section below. I'll do my best to answer it. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon.